DeSean Jackson's latest comments on the involvement of NIL in college football hammers home some major points on its impact on himself, HBCUs, and college football as a whole. Oh yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today, Saints Wire, and site expert at Who Dat Dish. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusive. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If new customers go to FanDuel, you can get $200 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Now, as we wrap up today's episode, we'll take a look at Tyson Williams, who's going from Johnson C. Smith to South Carolina, and I think that he is primed and ready to take on the higher level. In segment 2, HBCUs will not be in EA Sports College Football 26, and I don't think they'll be in 27 or 28. I don't think it's going to happen for a while, but if it does, HBCUs should be the first FCS schools to be involved. Speaking of involvement, DeSean Jackson talks about the involvement of NIL in college football, and I really think that it drives home a couple of major points. Number one is something that we're not unfamiliar with. It's not something that we've never heard before, but his comments really do reinforce a point. You ain't competing with NILs. At the end of the day, on the HBCU level, the NIL is a force you simply cannot compete against. And I would argue that that extends all the way from FCS to the FBS, G5, P5, PWIs on the FCS level, HBCUs and the HBCU conferences, A&T, Hampton, Tennessee State. It doesn't matter who you are. There tends to be somebody with deeper pockets. There's only one person who has the deepest pocket in every single situation, and that person changes depending on who you're talking about, right? We've seen players go into a bidding war, and maybe I'm willing to, I'm in Texas. Let's do Texas and Oklahoma, right? Texas got some deep pockets, but for a certain player, Oklahoma may be willing to go deeper into theirs. So that's the thing about NIL. It's an entire bidding war, and it's a force you can't compete against no matter who you are. No matter who you are, NIL is going to bite you in the backside. Like, that's just at the end of the day what you're going to see. It's just about how much that it costs you. When it comes to HBCUs, it costs you a lot of talent. And that's something that DeSean Jackson is going to have to deal with. He's going to have to learn because there's simply less money at HBCUs, and it's nothing he can do about it. There is nothing that you can do about NILs because it's not as if DeSean is paying these players out of pocket. And even if he was, advantage would still go to these bigger schools. They got donors. They pay their coaches more. Yes, I understand that DeSean, hopefully he was responsible with his money. Hopefully he still got some investment, got some deals. Hopefully he's taking care of his funds. So he's well paid. But as far as current influx of money, he's not getting paid like the coach of Texas. He's not getting paid like the coach at Clemson. He's not getting paid like these SEC, ACC, Big Ten coaches. So if they got to come out of pocket, I'm sure that they will probably be able to go a little bit deeper into those pockets than DeSean Jackson would because the influx of money is a little bit different. I don't know where he's at in general. I'm not pocket watching. The other thing that he said, this is an exact quote, actually. He said, I may not be able to offer $1 million because the point that I'll read the quote first, actually. I may not be able to offer $1 million. I may be able to offer 20,000 in NIL, but my name may be able to make up for the rest of that money. DeSean is not. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think that DeSean Jackson is a powerful name. I don't know if it's a $980,000 name. I'm just being real with you here. I think that when I start off by saying NIL is a force that we can't compete with, some may feel like big name coaches is the greatest weapon we have against it. You may feel like the best way to even the score between HBCUs and bigger schools is to have bigger named coaches. But I'm here to tell you, if it goes from 1 million to 20,000, your name's not making that up. Where I think the name comes into play is maybe grabbing high school talent, grabbing transfer players who don't have a large amount of NIL from somebody else, NIL offer from someone else. I think that's where big name coaches tend to help you. So, and I know DeSean probably doesn't think the 20,000 to 1 million is going to make a difference because of his name. I know he probably doesn't feel that way, and it's probably optimistic. He's being optimistic and hoping that things can even out a little bit, and they do to a certain degree. But I think that name recognition only really works against other HBCUs. If I got to compare Delaware to Ohio State, and the bag Ohio State is going to offer this offensive tackle versus the one Delaware State is going to offer this offensive tackle, I don't think that DeSean Jackson's name and the connections that he has is going to make it up. Like, that's the thing. When we talk about big name coaches, the thing that we speak about the most is the connections that they have. Oh, well, Michael Vick was in the league. DeSean Jackson was in the league. Deion Sanders was in the league. Eddie George was in the league. They got these connections that, you go with them. You don't have to go to this bigger school. You think Ohio State don't have connections? Right? Like let's be real here. If the bag is a great margin of difference, it's an easy choice. It's the paramount factor. And he says this. He says that guys are walking into his office and saying, look, this is what I'm getting. I'm going to go to the highest bidder. And that's crazy to him. And what I think that really drives home is the changing landscape of college football. But for him specifically, because he's a new coach, this is all he knows. And this is nothing like what he's used to as a player. He's already trying to get accustomed to becoming a coach. But imagine trying to learn how to coach while also learning how to navigate NIL. I don't envy that. I think learning how to coach 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds is a difficult job. I think understanding how to help them go from being boys to being men is a difficult job. To then have to balance people walking into the office and saying, look at this bag I got. Can you match it? If not, I'm chunking the deuce. That's not necessarily the best way to step into it. A lot of people think Nick Saban stepped away from the game because he didn't want to deal with that. And that's one of the greatest coaches in college football history, saying that I don't want to deal with this change in the landscape. So I think it is a difficult thing for Jackson to step into. And you can't big name your way out of this because there's bigger names. I'm just going to be real. The bigger name schools have bigger names than DeSean Jackson does as DeSean Jackson, just as a singular entity versus an entire program with boosters, with connections, everything. I don't think there's something he can say that they can't say. Then the last thing I wanted to say is, I had two more quotes. One, he said, if I would have went into Nick Saban and Pete Carroll's office back then and been like, I want this, I want that, they would have looked at me like, you better get out of here. This is him on the K Adams show, for the record. I think that this is a great way to show the change in landscape, and it really drives home something I didn't think about. The amount of power that these players have, I'm aware of, but I wasn't completely sure or completely knowledgeable about the comparison, right? Or how much power it was, because he's comparing them to NFL players in the 2000s and 2010s, right? Like, he's comparing them to that. And that, you have more powers than pro players. Like, some pro players may be able to go in and say, this is what I'm getting, what's going on. But then the margin is different there too, right? Like, what the New York Giants is going to offer you versus what the Baltimore Ravens are going to offer you, it's not that big of a difference. It's not 4 or 5 million. It's not 3 million. It may be 1 million, maybe half. Like, even that half is a big deal. We just saw Bryce Underwood flip from LSU to Michigan, and it was a very public bidding war. It was a very public bidding war of Michigan trying to get Bryce Underwood. I don't know the exact difference between the NIL amounts, but I do know it was a good amount of a good margin of difference. And then lastly, Jackson says, I honestly look at this era now as free agency. It's almost like an NFL system. It's like a farm system to the NFL. The NCAA, they're going to have to figure this out. There's no salary cap on it. And I do agree with this. You're going to have to find some way to balance it. Because if it's going to be a precursor to the league, that's great for players. Learn how to negotiate, learn what that's about when you're in college and you have a ceiling to hit. You can hit, or you have no real ceiling to hit. But then when you get to the league and you get into free agency, yeah, now you understand the negotiation tactics. You've been here before. You're more experienced. You're more seasoned. And I understand that your agent is going to be the one doing this. But I think that there is a certain level of player involvement to where, this is the thing that I like. This is the thing I don't. I feel like we're seeing more players begin to represent themselves. And I think NIL would help that, especially if you're just sitting there like, okay, I got 3-4 years to really hone in on my negotiation tactics, understand what I'm looking for. Now, when I get to the league, I know I can once again do that with contracts, and it's less often. It's probably less volatility within it. I think that we may see that. That's another thing. The rise of NIL could lead to more players representing themselves when you get to the professional level, because they are more experienced with representing themselves in college. You may see more players become their own representatives, become their own agents, trust people a little bit more that aren't necessarily established agents. I've seen LeBron do it. I think Jaden Daniels represents himself, or maybe his mom is. Lamar Jackson, I think, does it. I think you'll start to see more players who go through this NIL process begin to say, I'm familiar, I'm comfortable, and I'm okay representing myself. I don't have to give anybody else a cut of that percentage. I think that's a smart thing for them to do. And I think it's something you may begin to see with NILs rising. But I wrap it up the same way I started. NIL is a force you simply cannot compete with. I understand DeSean Jackson, Michael Vick, Eddie George, Deion Sanders. These names hold a lot of weight. And when compared to their peers, I think is going to make a huge difference. But one thing that it can't fight against is the NIL. The bags are just simply too big when you're talking about a Oklahoma, an Oregon, an LSU, an Ohio State, a Michigan, a Texas, a Miami. It's just too big of a bag. And I don't care what your name is. You don't have things they don't have. You have professional experience. They have a lot of coaches with professional experience and connections to the league. It works when you're talking about simply on the HBCU level. But it's one thing the NILs can't fight. They can't fight it. But as we push forward, speaking of exclusion, speaking of not being able to fight it, it don't matter how much you push, it doesn't seem like HBCUs are going to be on a college football game anytime soon. But if they do change their mind on FCS schools, HBCUs should be the first one. I'll tell you why as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. One thing I thought that was really cool is that the French Open is here, and I used to play tennis. I ain't gonna lie, that was my thing back in the day. And you can bet on the French Open. You can bet on Djokovic. He's going to play in about an hour if you're listening to this right when I'm dropping it. He's going to play in about an hour. You can bet on whether or not he's going to win a set, whether his opponent's going to win a set. How many games are they going to play in total before they finish the match? You have all of those, but maybe you prefer to just go with something you're more familiar with, like basketball. Do you think that the Pacers and the Thunder are going to score 25 points each in every single quarter? If the answer is yes, you can put some money down. If you want to get risky and say it's 30, you can do that. Or maybe you want to put a $5 bet down. That's a little bit easier. You win that and you go get $200 back in bonus bets so you can bet on the Thunder and Pacers to score 30 in each quarter. Whatever it is, go to FanDuel. They have so many options right now. So many options. Go to FanDuel.com and make every moment more. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA. The final start tomorrow. The Pacers, the Thunders, the Pacers and the Thunder, somebody's going to win that ring. Who are you going for? Shea Halliburton, FCS schools probably aren't getting in the EA Sports college football anytime soon. I hate to break it to you. I know that a lot of us are upset about it, but I don't think that is going to happen anytime soon. However, whenever they do make that decision to include FCS schools, if they make that decision, HBCUs, in my opinion, should be the first one. Oh, wow. Who would have thought? The Locked On HBCU host feels like HBCUs should be the first FCS school involved. Yes. Am I biased? Possibly. Am I slanted? Not at all. I'm going to tell you why. I had to bring something to the table, not just I like HBCUs. I went to an HBCU, let's put them in. That's not going to get it done. I think that there's a legitimate value here. Number one, let me break it down to you why I don't think it's happening anytime soon. I don't think the market is demanding it enough. You can't please everybody. So there's going to be people who are upset, but I don't believe that the uproar is loud enough for us to finally see HBCUs included. For example, last year when the game came back after a decade away, everybody was upset. People were people were crazy about the fact that HBCUs weren't being involved. This year, you once again get the game back. No HBCUs. I've heard nothing. No FCS schools. I've heard nothing. This is what I mean when I say the market isn't demanding it. I feel like HBCUs are growing right now. I'm going to continue to isolate it and then expand it between FCS and HBCUs. I know that HBCUs fall in the FCS, but I want to make sure I make it specific for my point. I don't think that in general, there is a great market for HBCUs, despite the fact that I genuinely believe that HBCU coverage and interest is growing. I think you can tell that by some viewership numbers. You can see that by some placement. I think that there are a lot of things going on that are good for HBCUs and good for the business. I don't want to take that away. But at the same time, if I got to make a financial commitment, if I have to make a financial investment, which is what they would have to do, they would have to do that to include a Grambling, to include a FAMU, to include a Jackson State, to include a North Carolina Central, to include a North Carolina A&T, a Morgan State, a Howard. You have to pay these players now. So you got 134 FBS schools that you are paying. You're committing to them. And those are the players, those are the teams that people want to play with most frequently. That's just the God's honest truth about it. And video game players, that's what I'm trying to say. Video game players, right? Or gamers, that's what they call it, right? You can tell I'm not one. But gamers want to play with Heisman Trophy candidates. They want to play with people who are going to win the Thorpe Award. They want to play with people who are going to be considered top 10 picks. That's who they want to play with, because most of us are casual. They want to play with the school they grew up watching. And there's more people who grew up watching bigger schools, so they're going to want to play with them. These people who are on, like Arch Manning. Arch Manning has barely played in college, but I can guarantee you there's going to be somebody who says, you know what, I want to go win Arch a ring. It just happens. The marketability is greater. I don't need to preach it. I don't need to harp on it, because I think we all know that. So you can't please everybody. And when we're talking about finances, you're probably going to spend the most money on those schools who are going to please the most. So now you're paying out to 134. I think they could afford to include HBCUs. I just don't think that they deem it worth the financial investment. I don't think that they want to do it. And I understand. I do. Because like I said, the demand just isn't loud enough. Last year, everybody was in an uproar. This year, crickets. I barely heard anybody complain about the fact that HBCUs aren't in the game. And you can't get fatigued in things like this. If you're trying to fight for inclusion, you cannot get fatigued, especially not after 1 year. You can't go from EA college football 25 and be in an uproar, and to go to 26 and it be crickets and say, man, that's just how it is. No. If you want to fight and include yourself, you have to be loud every single year. And the other reason I don't think that is going to happen now is because it doesn't feel like it. It simply doesn't, right? I remember I was talking to the founder of HBCU All-Stars last year, Tyson Williams, right? And I asked him about the women's game. I asked him, hey, when are you guys going to have a women's All-Star game? And he said, just wait on it. That was essentially what he said. I don't remember exactly. I'm paraphrasing. But he said, just wait on it. You know what I got the next year? An HBCU All-Star women's game. Because you felt it. I'm not going to say I wouldn't have asked that question, but the reason I felt so compelled and I felt like it was important, I remember doing that interview. It was a question that I couldn't miss. I had to ask that. The reason I had to ask is because you could feel the surge. Women's basketball last year, I guess that was 2024, it was becoming undeniable. It was becoming undeniable. And if you were to keep them away from the game, it'd be malpractice because people wanted to see it. People are excited about it. The stock is rising to a point where it's I'm not gonna say it's mainstream now, but it does feel like it's getting there. It's on its way. I think in a few years we will look at the WNBA or college women's basketball as a very mainstream thing. And maybe I'm slow to the party as far as acknowledging it to be that, but it doesn't feel completely mainstream just quite yet to me. But you felt that surge. HBCUs, FCS schools, they're not on that surge. There's two ways you could do it. You could do the top FCS schools, the North Dakota States, the South Dakota States, the teams that are competing for the championships on a regular basis. The teams that when you think FCS, you think, oh, that's one of them. You could do that. And I wouldn't be mad at it. I think it would make a lot of sense. For some, that would be the number one option because you're not going to get all FCS schools at one time. I just don't think it's happening. Maybe you get a DLC pack. Maybe you get a select few in a future game. A DLC pack to me would allow you to gauge the interest, how many people are investing in this. Should we just put it in the next game? These are things to think about. Anyway, you could do that, involve the top schools on the FCS level, or you could bring HBCUs, which in my opinion should be the way to go because you can't just give me more football. I don't think that's a good enough sales pitch to EA Sports. Oh, yeah, just need more football teams. No. But what HBCUs bring is diversity. And no, I don't mean that from a race component of PWI versus HBCU. It's a legitimate different culture. And I could see you installing features into the game. I'm no developer, so please allow me to be very shallow with this. If you have more suggestions, leave them in the comments. But you can have different road to glory modes. You can have you got a celebration bowl. I know you got the Mercedes-Benz stadium out there in Atlanta already in it. So I know that's not even a problem. You just have to change a couple of things with the graphics. You can have halftime shows. You can have the show with Tiffany and Jay. Like you can have so many different things that it feels like you have an addition to the game and not just more teams to play with. That's my thing about HBCUs in this environment. If you're looking at HBCUs in EA College Football 26 or what they could look like, I would get halftime shows. I would have different graphics. I would have different sounds with the band. I would have a different broadcast team. I think all of those things allow you to have a complete section of the game that is dedicated to HBCUs, and it's a reason to add them, not because people just want to play with their teams. It's more than that. I need more value than that from a business standpoint, and in my opinion, HBCUs have the potential to give you that. Now, as you push forward, somebody who's going in a good business for himself is Tyson Williams because he's moving on from JCSU, Johnson C. Smith, and he's going to South Carolina, and it's a place that I think he's primed to succeed. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Tyson Williams is going from Johnson C. Smith to South Carolina, and I think he's going to fit right in. Matter of fact, he'll probably be their best sprinter. Unless they have some more talent coming in through the portal and things like that, he should be their best sprinter in 2026. He's going from the D2 level to the SEC level, and a lot of people feel like, oh, that's such a big jump. And to a degree, yes. But I think all the jump from the D2 to SEC is beneficial to athletes. You get greater level of investment. Is going to be more finances put behind the sport. You're going to have a lot more, right? You may get more trainers, right? I think that the jump is all good because there's no competition level. That's not a thing in track. So my favorite thing about the sport is the time is the time. The height is the height. It's one of the few sports where you can go look at the stat sheet and legitimately know that's what happened. You ran the 10-1-2. You ran that. I don't care if I go outside and I run a 10-1-2 right now and you go to Texas Relays and run a 10-1-2, more people will know about it. I'm not even sure that's a great time, but more people would know about it, but that doesn't make you faster than me. And it doesn't mean if I step out there, I couldn't compete with you. That's what I love. So when you're looking at Williams going from D2 to SEC, I look at who's on South Carolina's roster, and his biggest competition will be a fellow sophomore. So both of these guys were freshmen this year. They'll be sophomores next season. And that is Anthony Greenhow. And that's the biggest competition. Greenhow had a season best of a 10-24 in the 100 and a 20-58 in the 200. let's get this out right now. Tyson Williams has the 4th fastest indoor 200 in D2 history. 4th fastest in D2 history. Not just this year, ever. Ever. Right? Now let's focus on outdoors because these are outdoor numbers for Greenhow. I want to keep it pretty even, but I wanted to just highlight the speed. Williams has 3 times faster. 3 times that were faster than Greenhow's best in the 200. So the best that Greenhow ran in the 200 was a 2058. Williams ran a 2017, a 2042, and a 2048. Then you go to the 100, where Greenhow ran a 1024. That's his best time. In Williams' first meet, he ran a 1021. Also, you go to the D2 championships, he ran a 1003, which was his season best. The only thing that I could look for out of him, was more consistency. I felt specifically in his 100, there was a large variance in between his best times and then the rest of the season. Like, he kicks it off with a 1021, which is great. Like, that was his best run for a large portion of the season. Then he goes 1047, 1045, 1031, 1032. And I just thought it was a little bit more variance as we go through that. Then he gets to Division II track and field, the Division II track and field championships, 1003, 1009. Now, the 1009 did have 4.0 win. So that was a decent amount of win. But still, you have a much better time. So I thought it was I thought it was a little too much variance for me on that. But the 200, you run a 2017, then you go 2048, 2056, 2042, 2063. So it's not as if he's not consistent. It's just his best time is an outlier on that. Granted, you go through it, 2048, 2056, 2042, those are all better. I didn't even mention the 2056, but those are all better than Greenhow's season best of a 2058. So I'm just comparing him, Tyson Williams, to South Carolina's best sprinter. You go through it. South Carolina's best sprinter in 2025 has been Anthony Greenhow, and he ran a 2058 in the 200 as a season best, and he ran a 1024 in the 100 as a season best. Right? Like, you got to follow me, because I'm not trying to say that every single run is this. I think that Greenhow did have more consistency. Going to South Carolina maybe could bring down or bring up some of those times, right? So, or bring down some of those times. But when I compare Anthony Greenhow, South Carolina's best sprinter in 2025, to Tyson Williams, the latest recruit, yeah, he's going to fit in very well, because Greenhow ran a 1024 season best in 100, and then he ran a 2058 season best in the 200. Well, Tyson Williams ran a 2017, a 2048, a 2042, a 2056, all in the 200. That's 4 times better than what Greenhow did. He also ran a 1009, a 1003, and a 1021 in the 100. Those are 3 times that are better than Greenhow's season best. So I think that Tyson Williams is not only going to fare extremely well at South Carolina State, he's in position to go in and be their best sprinter. So I'm not concerned at all about the rise from Johnson C. Smith to SEC competition with the South Carolina Gamecocks. It's just about, will he be more consistent? And I think the answer is yes. Now, on Friday's episode, we're going to talk about Alabama State and how they are the top team in the SWAC as far as the All Sports Award, as well as who won the MEAC on the men and women's side for the All Sports. Let's talk about the teams that were the best in their conference as we continue and wrap up this week's editions of Locked On HBCU. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed, peace.